Direct from the Six, world-renowned, Canada's largest city, with Canada's biggest thinkers, visionaries, and hustlers. This is Startup Talk, featuring the founders, funders, innovators, and community leaders who've led Canada's startup ecosystem right here in Toronto. You'll hear the challenges, the failures, the successes. Toronto's Startup Podcast gives you the full story direct from the entrepreneurs and influencers who've made a difference. Now, the host of Startup Talk, the founder of TorontoStarts, the Startup Coach.
It's going for investors at the right time. And let me ask you, with your investor hat on, for entrepreneurs looking to maximize their company's value, what are some of the key strategies or metrics they should focus on?
The biggest one is profitability. I would say once you can, I saw a great quote. It's somebody talking about this on YouTube. I can't remember. They said, stop trying to scale your problems, scale solutions. And I love that idea, because if your business is not profitable and then you try to scale it, you're scaling a problem. And you think, oh, scale's going to solve it. I'm a big Porsche fanatic, and Porsche had this amazing last air-cooled engine, 993, in the 1990s. It was the most unprofitable product for them because they spent so much money in R&D and so much money building the car. And they didn't go, oh, if only we just sell more cars. No, they hired somebody and they completely reimagined their manufacturing process. So their next car was highly profitable again. So I think the big thing here really is profitability, then scale. Because if you can figure out what your business model needs to be for it to work, then you can figure out how to scale it. And yes, it takes a lot of work to do that. But honestly, if you have a profitable business, you're maximizing the value of your company. And I think, another thing that we often think about is there's a lot of talk about, we often think about exits to strategics. So what I mean by that, in case somebody isn't familiar with that term, is exiting to another large corporation. So for example, you build a technology, Salesforce buys it. It's an example, or Apple buys it. But there's also a huge market in the private space, in the private equity space, right? And so you don't necessarily have to build a business to exit to a strategic. And majority of us won't, because the majority of us don't fall into that 1% unicorn status. So the majority of us will build businesses that are bought by other private investors or other companies. And so profitability is the fundamental thing that allows you control. If you can do that, then you can figure everything else out. You can invest back in your company. If you need to take an injection of capital, you also have choices, right? You don't necessarily need to get VC money. You can, or you can come to people like me, family offices, but you can also go to banks to finance your business as well if you're profitable. So there's just so many more options in front of you as well. And by the way, I know I'm talking myself out of a job because I also like to invest in companies, but I think that's the great joy of being an entrepreneur, is ultimately to have control over what you're doing and what you're building, and to have that sense of joy.
Where do people go to find out more?
You can go to Investment Arc, but ARC is spelled with a K, so investmentark.net. That's my investment company. So if you're a startup and you need some assistance, that's where to find me. And then, of course, my newsletter, Decision Lab. And you can also find me on LinkedIn. Please don't hesitate to connect with me. And again, Craig will have a link to my LinkedIn profile as well.
Yeah, and all that'll be there. And I'll throw a link to the newsletter in the chat on LinkedIn. I see a couple of people asking it in an hour or so after the podcast. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Thank you all for the great questions. And thank you for the great interview.
Thank you so much for having me.
This has been Startup Talk, Toronto's startup podcast. For more exclusive content, the episode vault, and to be part of Toronto Starts community, visit TorontoStarts.com. Get your name on the newsletter mailing list and check out our upcoming events. For more episodes, subscribe now. And please recognize the time and work behind the scenes put into connecting you with the biggest visionaries, entrepreneurs, and innovators in Toronto by leaving a 5-star review. Join us for more next episode from Toronto's most active entrepreneur and startup community on Startup Talk.